Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Margarita Zabalin, and on behalf of the organizing team, myself, Jane Caldwell, and Jeff Aziz, I'm delighted to welcome you to the Faculty AI Literacy Seminar, Exploring AI in Teaching and Research. We're bringing you together today because artificial intelligence is no longer on the horizon, right? It's here. It's in our classrooms and it's reshaping how we teach, how students learn, and how we conduct research. Whether you're already experimenting with AI tools or just beginning to explore what's possible, this seminar is designed to give you practical insights and real world perspectives. Over the next 90 minutes, you'll hear from three different voices: a leader from industry showing us where the technology is actually headed, our own Pitt Digital team talking about tools you can start using today, and a crucial conversation about maintaining academic integrity as these tools become part of everyday life. Let me quickly walk you through our agenda. We'll start with our keynote from David Evans at Duolingo, followed by information about available AI tools from Pitt Digital, and we'll close with Jeff Aziz discussing academic integrity in the age of AI. A few housekeeping notes. For all segments, please submit your questions via the Zoom chat, and we'll have a brief Q&A. We'll be sharing a survey link. It's scheduled to go out sometime during the presentation, and your feedback will be incredibly valuable to us in helping us plan future sessions like this. Now, let me introduce our keynotes. David, I'm pleased to introduce David Evans, Senior Engineering Manager at Duolingo. David leads software engineering initiatives at one of the most innovative companies in educational technology. I mean, we all know Duolingo, where he's been at the forefront, integrating generative AI to enhance language learning for millions of users worldwide. So, with that brief introduction, David, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. I hope I have permission. I'm not good at Zoom, which is funny. And I also want to say, before I get started, I don't historically do keynote style talks. I usually do sort of rabble rousing. I go to Jeff Aziz's classes sometimes and poke at students until they tell me what art is. And also two of the maybe four or five undergraduate Titan professors that really influenced my world thinking are on this call. So I'm a little on my back foot. But maybe they'll both see. Only one of them knows, probably because it's been so long, but maybe they'll pick up on how that worked. Not good at titling. You are what you measure. I came up originally, this was called Things That Will Fail Us. And I just want to start really quickly, dive right in, a vibe history of information. This is not well researched, but it feels right. We start with information tied up in the church in a silo. Church says, we can know things, you may not. You may be really impressed with us. That's allowed. That's very cool. We keep our sacred texts in languages that only we know. We have very big buildings to show you how impressive we are. And if you're not a priest, you can take a hike and you can leave your money on your way out. University comes into existence sort of in conversation with the dogma of the church. It's kind of in direct opposition, right? So we're loosening up the control of information. The church was gatekeeping that kind of stuff through, the restricted access to those texts, the monopoly on interpretation, and the sole power of credentialing, so only they can stamp out priests. Universities really wanted to work on empirical inquiry, right? Establishing the truth through observation and peer review. So let's open it up and talk about it. Let's let everybody in the door. So rather than that existing hierarchy, universities and modernity are looking for a way to open that up. And I'm sure everybody's by now heard this tired comparison to the printing press. I'm not going to do it. I respect all of you too much. This will be my only mention of that in the whole talk. we're gonna birth big tech out of the university now. We have come up with a way to create an infinite graduate school. Universities taught us all this intense, focused environment. It's about benchmarking, quick learning, quick benchmarking, learn and test, repeat. We'll work hard, we'll play hard. We're going to do tech transfer out to the private sector. We're going to do some stuff to restrict access to that club. Um, the monopolies that we created are sort of a natural outcropping of our greatness. And boy, do we love that money from the church era. Glad we're bringing that one forward. Sorry. Uh, Big tech did some stuff to copy universities. One of the biggest ones that happened was that we needed a way to really quickly ferret out who was good and smart enough to come in the door. And it had to be as narrow as possible. And so we came up with a couple of first and second order tools to do this. And the AI really destroyed our favorite one in a pretty big way. But I'll get back to that in a minute. Now we can do the intro. Now we can talk about who I am. Why do you care about listening to me? And you may not even after I am done with this. I do computer for job. This is what I tell people. I try not to put too fine a point on it. I've been doing this for 25-ish years. I have been through the sort of like web thing, the .com boom. I've been through mobile. I'm into AI now. I'm probably part of the last true era of theorists that came out of computer science before the universities moved a little more to practical training. So I actually learned enough theory that by the time I got out, it was hard for me to get a job because I didn't know all of the most modern languages. This is relevant. This is why this is one of my favorite topics. So I went to Pitt. I've done some startups. I worked at Google on spam and intelligence in texting. So I've really looked deep into the heart of scamming and advertising and what a technology company can know about you. And I'm at Duolingo now. I've done ML, and we never used to call it AI. We hated that term because we thought it was kind of hokey. But now we call it that because, it's a good marketing term. You got to go where the heat is. I've been doing that for a while. Through a couple of AI winters, as they call them. I currently teach language with AI, although I think we can offline maybe talk about what that means. It feels a little funny to say that to this group, but I have developed a lot of opinions and practical outcomes and methods on how to do this. I'm not here to promote or defend Duolingo. I am. That's not my job. I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about the actual core methodology of what we do for this specific feature and how to teach language is really not ultimately probably that interesting. It's definitely not as simple as it seems at the surface, even though everybody's knee-jerk reaction, as I'm sure everybody here is probably familiar, everybody's knee-jerk reaction is that you can go into ChatGPT and say, teach me Spanish, and it appears to begin to do that fairly well. I'll come back to that. I want to get back to this story. So we're in infant grad school. We have decided to create the money-making version of universities. A virtuous cycle will appear here at some point. I may or may not point it out. We've got freewheeling parties. We've got intense coding sessions, infinite youth, totally non-self-aware. Tech starts to really rely on the university system to do first order sorting. Where did you go to school? What did you learn? Can you produce code in those languages that we care about the moment that you get out of school? Nerds are really cool now in the mainstream. We have learned to ask for forgiveness, not permission. This has become sort of like the marching order of the last quarter century. And big tech now has taken the sole power of credentialing away from everyone else, other businesses, other industries, and especially universities. But they have given us these wonderful gifts. The internet, information for everyone. Everyone's connected. Mobile. Now you can be anywhere in the world and get that information. And social media. I would also like to note here, and maybe this is a thing to keep in mind, uh, literally nobody asked for any of these. These were not asked for. They didn't actually maybe solve anything. And they brought along some inconvenient complications. Um, Everything had a dark side. Most tech companies knew about these while they were happening. The web created these little pockets of radicalization and these vile forums for sharing terrible things online. Mobile brings this always on burnout that corporate culture really latches on to. The idea that the intensity of work can now follow you everywhere that you go. You should always be available to all people at all times. Social brought the rage bait economy. And we asked what will AI bring, and my idea is that it's probably just more ads. But that's like a different, more cynical talk that I could probably give if somebody were interested in it. Generally speaking, I think what's interesting here is knowing that again, we didn't ask for these technologies, and they came with positives that we kind of worked our way backwards from. Um, I'm going to take a very brief dip into AI training and optimization, just briefly, so we're all talking about the same thing here. It is really not that interesting unless you're into this stuff. If you're a normal person, there's very little to be learned from understanding exactly how pre-training works. So you give it a massive corpus of text. Um, uh, it figures out the proximity, the likely next token, how related any two tokens are at a given distance. As a side effect of this, purely as a side effect of this, this emergent feature shows up where it kind of learns facts. It kind of understands the sort of mathematical relationship between topics. It's hard to actually make models do this on purpose. It turns out that if you make them very, very large and give them a whole lot of data, they get to do this. Now, what you actually do is that, like, you're kind of turning everything into a math problem. Most people know this, I think, by now. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're trying to make this math problem as accurate as possible. Like, it's trying to figure out the mathematical function for how to tell you about James Buchanan's presidency. But at the end of the day, you are trying to make sure that its next token prediction is really accurate. You're using human feedback to tell it, like, no, actually, we prefer this result to this result. And this is how you get this sort of like tuning on how sycophantic it is, or how positive or negative it can sound. And its pattern matching is basically probabilistic. And so it itself, as it's generating, actually modifies its own probabilities. So once it thinks it's right, it will think it's more right as it goes. Um, Generally speaking, the thing to remember about here is that these pieces that it's mathematically optimized for are kind of the only thing that it actually knows. So the whole thing is kind of tilted in this direction of just making sure that it's putting together something coherent that is roughly related to the thing that it decided to show you before. Tech companies do the same thing. Um, this is what they measure. They measure daily active users, engagement time, ad revenue. Tech companies really want you to be on their product as much as they possibly can. And as a result, all of the decision making is kind of based around that at some level. So all of the platitudes that sit on top about social efforts and donating to this or that and being sort of like a good in the world, at the end of the day, your mission statement can be stripped back very closely to precisely these numbers that people who invest in your company look at, and the leadership of the company looks at vis-a-vis their need to continue to make the line go up. Sorry, that's the last time I'll say that. Maybe. Universities, interestingly enough, here's a virtuous cycle that starts to happen. Universities are really the place where you learn how to think, and are given room to do this and are given ways to look at it. But if you start to do that thing where you peel back the sort of like social good and start to look at the machine and like the corporation that has come up in the university, I hope this is not controversial here. Maybe it is controversial here. I don't know. But from the outside, it seems like enrollment numbers really matter, endowment growth really matters, graduation rates really matter. rankings for US News and World Report really matter, right? Like that, all of this is part of that flywheel that keeps the machine going. And that machine is like tied up to big tech in some way. That's so the idea is like, what you measure is what you ultimately are. So these measurements that are at the sort of macro are unfortunately a thing that you have to reckon with. And this is ultimately what you do at the end of the day. And it can be a little bit of a bummer, I admit. How you measure these things also matters. And I think a fair question to me right now, midway through ish, this talk is like, where is this going? Like, what are you talking about? Um, my sort of shorthand thing is that all optimizations are going to fail because nothing at all stays the same. Every metric that you measure ultimately becomes gameable and reverse engineerable somehow. Big tech. Um, we really loved this idea of making a new grad go up to a whiteboard and nervous hand shaking, tell them to implement a depth first search and then how to reverse a binary tree in constant time and then to modify it in certain ways. And we really wanted to see that code that looked right. We really wanted people to solve these little puzzles in code right in front of us. This used to be what was really useful, like the best way for us to make sure that we knew that we were getting high quality people. LLMs really just came along and made that cost nothing and made it totally worthless. That skill is irrelevant on its own in the modern era. There's an intense freak out about this in basically every level. There is a question even to the identity of people who have been doing it for as long as I have been. What matters now? Do I need a company around me? Do apps need to exist now because AI can just spit out the specific app that you want to use just from you asking? And the whole reaction is this sort of big cycle that just happens at the macro level. Bunch of panic. What is this thing? A lot of companies right now are hiding layoffs behind this idea that like AI is replacing all their people. I won't get into that. So we ban it. You start by banning it. Then you start coming up with this control idea where it's like, well, it's usable by this certain people, this focus group that has been blessed to sort of go out ahead and take a look. Or you try to make sure that like people are really explaining like, okay, well, just specifically this is what I did with it. And then they try to figure out like the adapt phase, where they try to figure out like, okay, well, let's be real here. Like, how does this actually help? How do we actually work with this? Tech is somewhere in this control and adapt place in general. I think we've kind of collectively moved on from the idea of banning. Um, uh, I suspect that education broadly is somewhere in the ban control boundary. I'm sorry, my camera is moving around because it keeps detecting a face and a portrait behind me. It's not something that I planned for. Um, so coming back with that in mind to teaching language with AI, um, that optimization function, that big training thing that we talked about earlier, um, all of that data is kind of pointed at that volume, ends up being kind of the average of everything that came into it. It's aimed at optimizing for the most likely set of stuff. So you end up in this kind of like general distribution, this big bell curve of numbers where everything in like the top 10% is mostly where everything is. So your kind of quick ask to get it to teach you Spanish will end up in this pretty reasonable, pretty fine looking distribution in the top 10%, and you would be pretty pleased with that. A really concrete example of why this doesn't work in the case of trying to teach people how this works is that that average means that you can't tell it realistically to make it more or less difficult. It doesn't really have an understanding of what that means. It can make things sort of longer or make the construction more difficult broadly, but you can't sort of tell it about a progression. It doesn't really have a concept of this. It's going to parachute into any particular spot that you specifically guide it into. It itself is not going to intuit what a ninth grade versus a 10th grade Spanish education is like. This assumption from like, well, the LLM can accurately translate any text that I give it. It must mean that it can teach it, right? There must be some path to A to B, which I would say like that's pretty funny. Like it is The idea that it can give you the explicit linear transform for you to walk through from knowing nothing into being able to translate an arbitrary piece of text is kind of funny because it's not concerned with that change, right? It's concerned with the task of translation. It doesn't really understand the process or the nuance of teaching. At Duolingo, a thing I think that a lot of people might not know, probably don't know, I don't know how they would know. Um, there's a lot of effort that we put into getting the LLM to do exactly that. And I mean, we're doing short 8, 9, from 4 to I think 12 turns in a conversation that are targeted specifically to like the uh, the things that the user has already learned, where we expect their ability to be, and then things that we sort of think that they might know. And there are many teams that are learning experts, like language learning experts. Prompt engineering is real, is maybe not as real as everybody wanted it to be. And then like measuring these things on the other side is also super complex. And then fine tuning models to get better at this. Um, since it really wants to be the absolute mathematical average of everything that you're telling it to do, um, you have to really know what you're telling it to do every step of the way in order to get it to do the thing that you want. It is the case that it looking good enough after you bang on the LLM for a little while doesn't mean anything at scale. It doesn't mean anything versus what the person next to you is going to do. To that end, what LLMs are good at, like they're really good at being conversational because it's part of how they're trained. Um, they're really good about pattern matching across massive sets of data. They're really good at making plausible text. It is hard to look at LLM output as a casual reader and not notice what it looks like. They're also really good at writing repetitive, like syntax style code. So, like structural outputs, like stylistic changes, they're great. One of the first features that I launched at Google in the texting app was the ability to take any text message that you drafted and to style transfer it into sounding like something Shakespeare wrote, potentially in a lyrical format. It was great at it because it is a structural syntactic change that it needs to make. It pretends to be a stylistic change, which is introducing nothing except for the mechanics necessary to attain the goal. So again, they're bad at teaching. They don't do Socratic method. Like they don't really know if you're confused or if you're wrong, unless you're very wrong. They don't really have any curiosity at all. There's not really a state in that optimization function that is I don't know. And occasionally people will write like shocking articles that say like, oh, did you know that LLMs don't know how to say I don't know, and that's why they hallucinate. And it's like, well, yes, there's no mathematical way for it to say I don't know. It's only capable of taking the most probable thing. Even if that probability is near zero, it's still going to take the highest probability at the end of the day. They also, and I think we can all agree on this, have no idea of taste. There is no optimization function. There is no loss function that you can write to do taste. So you can't optimize this thing to be really good at doing something pretty clever. Um, I threw all my programmers in the trash. Um, the artifacts in tech aren't valuable anymore. The industry historically was propped up on this myth of like the genius hacker, right? This person who just sort of naturally, the computer is a natural extension of them. They can sit there for 2 and 3 days at a time and rewrite the whole code base, and they would stay up for 4 days and write all of Facebook on the first go. And this is what we were amazed by. We'd been scaling for years this idea that like all we were there for was to like create this structured artifact. And we really lost sight of this idea of problem solving as an art, like the theory behind it. Some people, I'm going to generalize. I'm doing a keynote, right? I'm just going to, I'm maybe too reasonable in this way. Um, but we kind of moved our eye just looking at kind of like user growth and ad revenue and figured like, well, the machine will be in place uh, indefinitely. It's like an interesting problem. The LLM can write something grammatically perfect. Can it do one that's novel? Do write something novel? It can't. It really wants to be coherent. It really doesn't want to explore a space that it's uncomfortable with. It'd be very hard to get it to um, confidently point out similarities in something that you didn't specifically ask it to do. Um, so uh, AI is kind of extinction level for can you code. So like, how do we decide who gets in? Remember, this is what we were using to figure out which new grads were good enough to get in. Um, if we're, if AI can do the perfect code, what does it say about what we've been optimizing for? Uh, we're really starting to look at this now, like collectively, the industry. It's not something that we can ignore. The question is moving to, can someone guide the LLM well? Is it are you good at working with it? Can you use it as a way to like improve your output, to speed up or multiply your output? Um, we were measuring like your ability to parrot this sort of syntactic output. The structure was all that we cared about. Um, this is still a debate, and this is a debate primarily because it makes people very uncomfortable. Because the next logical thought is, of course, you can simply replace programmers with AIs, right? This is the idea of this, and I swear this is the last time I'm going to say agentic AI in this talk. But this is like the promise of agentic AI is that you can like have an invisible set of tireless brainiacs sitting around doing your bidding. Why would you pay someone? Or worse yet, why would you ever pay somebody who is not an industry veteran to do any of this work? If the AI is now surpassing the syntactic capability of a new grad. And I think that's actually the scariest part there. But the idea is to move to a new assessment model. Uh, you know, here's some AI generated code. What's wrong with it and why? Still makes mistakes. They're harder to spot. They're very subtle, and so that's actually a whole new area that's coming out. Coming up with system architectures, AI is never going to be good at this. This is like a design problem. This is like an art. It will know things that it has seen before. It's just not going to get good at it anytime soon. And then understanding trade-offs, I think, is like a big fertile area for this, which is like, like what is good and bad about doing this, and where is it applicable and where isn't it? Where does it actually save you time? As a sort of quick aside, we have to write automated tests for all of our code professionally. You can ask an AI to write a test for your code. It falls back on its optimization. It will happily write you a test that appears to test something, but then if you ask it again, is this actually testing it? It will tell you no, because it is able to know that, but because you unless you think, oh, I need to tell the genie to make one that works, it doesn't bother to do it. But all of this is to say the CS degree is still important, right? The utility of what's being taught is still there, but like what we were measuring on the outside and what sort of seeped in to the way that it is taught over time is maybe broken. The sort of idea that like the industry skills have gone a little too far upstream, and this is where the freakout is coming from. The idea that syntax is important is just not true anymore. It is basically free. Um, Leads me to this broader question: like, if AI is extinction level for how you teach them, like, what are you teaching? Um, if AI can produce good enough writing, what does it say about what we've been optimizing for? I think this is the question that education in general needs to wrestle with, right? We are at a point in history where we need to move from assessing the output to assessing the thinking. This is opinion. You can disagree with me. I'm cool with that. I'm grown up. Um, Taste is not a thing that these things are good at. This is where, and I'll mention it only one time later, this is where the concept of slop comes from. Critical analysis is not going to come out of the LLM. Wisdom is not going to come out of the LLM. You might have things that stylistically look like it, but it's just not going to happen. So like this sort of shared fear across our whole history lesson here is like this loss of monopoly on scripture and like the objective definition of truth coming arbitrarily from the church. Universities used to own credentialing, and tech used to own this monopoly on syntax and complexity, and various other monopolies. But I'm not going to talk into that. So the question is like, do we just kind of give up? Um, the cost of being correct is zero. There is no longer value in being objectively correct. Um, there is no value in limiting access. There's no value in limiting credentialing anymore when the cost of being correct is zero. This is the sort of post-fax era. That's more of like a talk to me at a bar about it conversation. But we have really moved sort of societally, collectively into an area where AI fits in perfectly because we really care a lot about whether something roughly feels like it's correct. And the idea that you have positioned yourself as an expert is usually enough for most people to back down and not challenge you. So, a couple of ways that people can argue about this thing where AI is here and you just got to deal with it. You can just detect, you use an AI detector. This is an arms race between tech companies, right? This is perfect. This is great. If you found an AI detector and you have a good sales team, this is a great line of business to be in. You're in an arms race. You are caught in the middle. You are going to find one that works fairly well for the ones that you check. You will occasionally spot check ones to see if it was right or not. And you yourself will now get dragged into the problem because you'll be like, I don't know if this really was like that or not. But that's one way that you could go. Here's an argument against them. AI companies exploit human creativity for slop. Sure. Uh, don't disagree with that one. Do you need AI for slop? This, for an example, this is AI automating the artifact, the output, the structure, the syntax again. I would argue that the Disney Corporation has done more for slop without AI in our culture than perhaps OpenAI would ever want to do or could ever do. Maybe that's why they've teamed up. It is a natural synergy. Um, they hallucinate. Yes, I agree with this. They can only pick the next most probable token. There are fleets of models downstream that attempt to fact check and to prevent this from happening. They are strongly incentivized to fix this and to make them more factual. I think this is a temporary problem. I think this is like a lousy thing to build a castle on top of. So, and I'm trying to speed up because I know I'm out of time. So a couple of options: assessing taste, how to do it, AI to draft, annotate where it was wrong, keep the draft there, teach people how to look at something that the AI produced and to understand the perspective of critiquing its output as an actual talent. Show show the prompting strategy and the iterations on it. It is a little weird to read somebody else's interaction with an AI. I have to do this sort of professionally. It is like somebody telling you about a dream that they had. It is kind of pointless at some level. But it is interesting to see how somebody sort of navigated what was coming out of it and whether or not they understood what they were trying to get to. Um, I think being able to defend why you decided to go with the AI thing, I could do that about the imagery in this deck, if you would like to hear it. Is another good way to do that. And then just sort of like pointing and laughing at the AI is also fun. Just like talking about where they messed up, I think is important for everyone. It's not only a little bit of levity, but it's a reminder that like they are like a mechanical machine. They will do something wrong. What will fail us? This was the original title of this talk. Um, Definitely going to get it wrong. This is not going to work right out of the gate. Nobody's first attempt at this is going to be right. AI broadly will have unintended consequences. We kind of know what some of them are already. They're probably not what we originally thought. There are deep, dark societal forces that come out of this thing that I don't want to get into here because they bum me out. Happy to talk about them offline sometime if you have 2 or 3 hours and are just really in a bad mood. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. Um, AI is happening. This is like a tough one. Um, we didn't ask for the web and social media and the mobile phone, the smartphone. We didn't want them. We didn't ask for them. They're unavoidable now. Like you can't operate without them. Like even if you wanted to, you can't seriously operate in the world that we live in without these things. You could probably do without social media, sure. But like parts of it are still going to influence your world, whether you want it to or not. So banning any of these things, should you go that path, is an art. You can do it. It's an uphill battle. Sure, go for it. An important thing to remember is that AI has no taste, no critique, no intuition. That's where everything interesting is. My recommendation, because I think that as a keynote speaker, I have to make a recommendation or I have to have some strong stance where where I insist on something happening, is consider making the interaction the accessible moment. Try to stop assessing the output strictly on its own and assess judgment. Um, Maybe try to redesign one assignment and make it fun for you. What are you curious about? You got a whole room of young people who are interested in understanding how these things work. Uh, uh, how can you sort of look at your own process and have somebody else check it out? This is my last two slides. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Jane and Rita, for having me. I got links in here. We'll share a PDF of this. You can bug me, argue with me, or be mad at me at either of these two things. I attached some fun links, some of which are actually relevant to the end of it. Three Blue, One Brown, a real good deep dive on neural networks and how they work. I just barely touched on it. Adam Curtis documentaries, because everybody should watch these. And Valdemar Januszczak deep dive, 3.5 hours on the art of the Dark Ages, because I just think it's a great piece of media. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I apologize for going over because I think I did.
David, thank you so much. This was absolutely fantastic presentation. Very helpful to hear the insights from someone who actually works with this stuff and builds this stuff. And thank you again. That was very enjoyable.
And I noticed Paula Kane said that she had to go and teach. It's a great comment in here. And I got to tell you, and I'm going to say it because she's not here now. Paula Kane, again, in the like Mount Rushmore of my undergraduate professors, at least two of the four were in here. And Paula Kane, who I've not spoken to since I had her popular religion in America class as an undergrad, I think that class had like such an outsized impact on my way of viewing the world that I got a little nervous when I saw that she was on the thing. So I'm glad that she wasn't here toward the end.
Okay, thank you again. All right. Now let's shift from the big picture to the immediate practical. Our colleagues from Pitt Digital, Dwight Helfrich and Dan McGaughey, are going to give us information on AI tools that are available to us right now at Pitt. So this session is called AI for non-coders, practical, approachable, and immediately useful. So Dwight and Dan, floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us here. I'm Dwight Helfrich, and I'm part of the AI enablement team in Pitt Digital. I've been working here a long time, and for the last 3 years, I've been working on strategy, which led into 100% AI over the last year. So happy to be here, and I have with me Dan McGaughey, who's the brains behind everything, and he's going to do most of the talking. So Dan, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Dwight. Good to meet everybody. I'm Dan McGaughey. I've been at the university for 9 years and worked in the IT department the whole time. Over the last year or so, I've been working closely with Dwight on some of these AI tools that we're going to show you. And I will share my screen.
So we're going to start off with just a couple of slides about how we're approaching AI, and then we're going to dive right into the tools. So really the first slide is we're going to talk about some of the truths about AI today. And Dan, you want to advance us?
Yes.
So the pace of technological change is changing faster than ever. And if you think about it, ChatGPT was created about just over 3 years ago. And at the time, that was the first real Gen AI tool that was widely available. Now there's tons of tools, like hundreds of tools that do very similar things. And I was thinking about it this morning. Last year at this time, Pitt really didn't have any enterprise-wide AI tools. Now, all the tools that we're going to share today have been deployed to the university in the last year. So we've made a lot of progress, 4, 5, 6 tools that we didn't have a year ago that we have now. So another important aspect is the education on AI is everywhere, but it's not all super helpful at this point. So you have to really look at what you're getting and try to understand it. One of the things we are starting to deploy some Claude training within our Pitworks system, so you guys should all be seeing that soon. Privacy and security of data is one of the most important factors in AI, and we always have to do everything with that in mind. AI can be a really valuable tool, but you really must validate things. There still are some hallucinations, as David said. I do think the tools are getting much and much better at that. And the hallucinations that I see, I can usually pretty quickly tell by looking at it and understanding what I expect that it's a hallucination. So you just really have to, while you're using the tools, you have to be thoughtful about what you're getting back. And one of the big terms now is agentic AI. And that's not quite there yet. It doesn't really work great. It's probably only a couple of years away. And when it does come, it will create great disruption to businesses and to society. So those are things to think about. And that's the truce. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about our point of view with AI. So Pitt Digital and our AI enablement team really focuses on capabilities and tools. We want to make sure that people understand that we don't govern the AI that's used at the university or how people use AI at the university. We make the tools available for people to incorporate into their daily work. These capabilities and tools, we're going to brand them as products where we can, like things like Pit GPT and AI Connect and AI Chat. And with the pace of technology changing, we understand that the architecture underneath those tools could possibly change and change quickly. So we think there will be a Pit GPT for a long term, but the way it looks and what's behind it might change over time. We are working to identify partners that deliver products at scale and speed and with efficiency. And all of the partnerships that we create really meet Pitt's security standards and needs, which means that our data is not being shared back to the model. It's not being used to train the model. So when we upload data, the data is safe. Having said that, we do have one of the links that we'll provide later is our approved AI tools link. And on that link, if you click on that link, you'll see what data is approved within what tool. So not all data is improved in all the tools at this time, but we have a lot of information about what is approved. And from here, we're going to take you into the tools and Dan's going to take it over.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. So we've kind of separated this presentation into the things that you're able to use with no cost. And then we have a smaller section of a few tools that are good for kind of niche applications that that would come with an additional cost for you to engage with them. So the first tool is Anthropic Claude for Education. So the university has, developed a partnership with Anthropic and selected them. And that this system has now been rolled out to all faculty, students, and staff. It's built in such a way to try to have education in mind. And the capabilities are really, really fantastic. I have the pleasure of meeting with different units across the university. And each time I have one of these meetings and we pose some sort of a problem to be resolved by Claude for Education, we're really surprised even now with its capabilities. So I really would encourage people to test it out, see what it's capable of. It's really good at doing things like document analysis. It can write code, which is something our previous presenter was talking a lot about. A lot of tech companies are using Claude to write a lot of their code. So a few of the features that really stand out for us in Claude, there are a couple of capabilities that are specific to education. One of those is learning mode. So when you access the system, and I'll have a short little show and tell of how to access the system coming up. But when you access the system, you can put it in learning mode. And this is an attempt by Anthropic to create what we talked about a little bit earlier about a sort of Socratic experience. Like that was need information for me to hear about how that might not be all the way there yet, but definitely something to try out. Then also there's a system of projects. This allows you to put a bunch of common information together, and you can share a project with some of your colleagues, and you can give instructions to the system to behave in a certain way. So if you all wanted to collaborate on curriculum design or something like that, you could put all of the information that you commonly share together and all work together instead of just one-on-one working with the AI model. You can also use the artifact functionality to create little small applications. Some common use cases we see is people making a little flashcard deck, or really it's almost hard to explore all the possibilities there, because it can, in theory, can create anything that you might, hack together as a small software application, but definitely something to try out. And we really highlight the privacy and security. This is true of all these tools that I'm going to describe. As Dwight mentioned, there's a use of AI document. You can go and look and see what kind of data is approved for use within them. But in each of these cases, if you sign in with your PIT credentials, you're protected. Your data will not be sent outside of PIT's environment. So this is a little video that I put together. And this is just going to show you the fact that you should always sign in with your credentials. So you can see here, I'm putting in my PIT username, and it's going to take me through our normal Passport login process that you're all familiar with. It first pops up and asks what your Microsoft ID is. A lot of times this will be hidden from you. If you're already on the internet, like say you went to MyPIT already or something, you wouldn't even be prompted for these things. You'd just be able to go. We have a link in this presentation to Claude, so you'll know the link. You can click on the link and get right in. But it's very important to make sure that you log in through Passport. And at the end of this section of the video, and I hope everybody's seen the video, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the word PIT, and you'll see my username as soon as this comes up. So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, it has Dan and it has PIT. So that's how you can tell. The second part of this video, which is going to come up here in a second, is just pointing out that you can go to MyPIT and just search for Claude. You don't have to remember a URL or bookmark it. But if you do so and you hit search, Claude will come up, and then you can just click on that tile there, and it'll launch the application for you. So, and that was an example of Claude, but this applies to all these tools. Always log in through Passport with your PIT credentials. If you happened to have a Google account, like a Gmail account, and you went to Gemini, for example, and you didn't think to log in with your PIT credentials, you might find yourself using the free version that's linked to your Google account, and you wouldn't be protected by PIT's agreements if you were to do that. All right, so the next tool we wanted to talk about is Microsoft Copilot Chat. This is, of course, Microsoft's offering, and if you have a Windows computer, you've probably seen Copilot in a number of places already, but we do have a university agreement, and the thing that this gives you access to is if you're working inside of Outlook or you're working inside of another Microsoft tool, it gives you access to what PIT data you have in Office 365. So that's very helpful if you want it to be looking at emails or documents in SharePoint or something like that. And the thing about all of these tools, Gemini is a big one, Copilot Chat's a big one, PitGPT, and Claude, they all present a lot of the same user interface. So, it's talking to an AI chatbot. Everybody's going to have their own preferences. So in my particular case, my preference is to use Claude for a lot of things, but you might find that Copilot Chat or Gemini is your preference. So I think it's good to try them all and see how you like the look and feel and the flavor of the data you get back and that kind of thing. Google Gemini and Notebook LM are the two products that we have offerings from Google on. Gemini is very similar to Claude and to Copilot Chat. It's really good at you can upload videos, you can point it to YouTube videos, you can upload pictures. I think we've seen really great. I don't know if it was with Gemini or not, but we've seen an example of even handwritten tests being interpreted by systems like this. It's called a multimodal system. So you could upload a scanned copy of a test and see if it thought that the questions that were answered were correct. So that's kind of like their chat thing. But Notebook LM is a particular application that's really nice. You can point it to websites, you can upload content, and then Notebook LM will allow you to ask questions of that content and does a really good job of summarizing everything that you've provided to it. But it also has some very neat capabilities to automatically generate a podcast based on that content, or automatically, I see Jeff is giving us a thumbs up. It can create a slideshow with audio accompaniment based on that content. And I've used that in some of our strategy meetings. It's really, really helpful. It gets people thinking. Oh, and by the way, Notebook LM is not it's not approved for sensitive data. So you only want to put kind of public use data in there. And then PittGPT, as Dwight mentioned, it was only a year ago or so that Pitt didn't have any commercial products available. So we worked with a third party to create PittGPT. It's similar to some of these other tools, but it does give us the capability to connect it directly to Pitt systems. So if we had a special case where we wanted to pull in student records, or we wanted to pull in employee data or something like that, PittGPT would be an option we could use. And it has a really nice feature. This is somewhat similar to Claude Projects, where you can create a reusable template. So you don't have to maybe save a prompt that you favor using off in a separate file and always paste it in. You can have that stuff automatically loaded, and you can just begin a talk with the AI and have all the same context if you had a repeatable process you wanted to do over and over again. Zoom AI Companion is a note taker and meeting summarizer that plugs right into Zoom, and that's available for anybody that has the ability to create. I think everybody has the ability to create Zoom meetings. And this is just a slide to once again emphasize always log in with your Pitt credentials. And we'll have, there's a slide, we'll share this presentation. There's a slide with the links to every one of these different tools I've been talking about. All right, and then the tools that come with a cost. So Copilot for Office 365, this gives you a deeper integration into the Pitt Microsoft 365 data that you have. This allows you to do things like say, tell me about the conversation I had with Dwight in October about AI tools and what our final decision was. And it'll look through all of your email data and come up with that. Or it can do the same thing with Teams data, with SharePoint, any of our Microsoft tools. It does come at a cost of $30 per month. We use this a lot to summarize bullet points for meetings. It'll pick out who the speaker was that assigned an action item, and it will tell them that they have an action item. And then Teams Premium is very similar, does the same thing for Teams meetings and Teams chats. We also have a slide. This is kind of for your reference if you want to look at this deck after the presentation. It just differentiates the different things that Microsoft calls Copilot, and in addition to that, GitHub Copilot, which is a coding assistant for anybody that's doing coding, that plugs into your coding environment and helps you write code. A couple of other tools we have available. Pitt AI Chat is aimed at any business unit or department that wants to put a chat bot on their website. It can learn from your content. So for example, the HR department is using this. So when you go to the HR website, if you chat with their bot, it's pointed at all we know as Pitt staff and faculty, all the HR information's on the internet. So it took all of that information and indexed it and provides answers. It also has a nice feature where administrators can review all the content of the chats that occur and refine the answers over time so they get better and better. And then Pit AI Connect is a great service which will be released very soon, which gives you the ability to obtain an API key to get access to any AI model. You can get Gemini, Claude, the OpenAI models. And the great thing about this is you don't have to contract separately with each of the AI providers. You can just work through Pit and you'll be billed for the use you use of any of those different models that are available. And here's the slide I mentioned about accessing the Pit AI tools. It doesn't only give you the link to get to the tool. Over to the right, we also have help desk articles on each of these things. So if you just click those links, it'll take you to sign in instructions, tips and tricks, where to go for help, all of that information. And thank you very much.
I think there are some questions in the chat. I don't know if you would like to address those.
I see a little bit of a conversation. It's a bit to read. I think David was weighing in on that one. So how's the university helping with the learning curve of using all this stuff effectively? And you mentioned faculty workload. We do have the trainings that Dwight mentioned. Those will be coming out through the PitWorks system. So you'll be able to get some training specifically on Claude because, you know, we have a Claude partnership and conducted some trainings that were recorded. So that's good. Hopefully what I found, this is just my own testimonial, my workload, even though I have more to do than I've had in my whole 9 years with how fast all this stuff is moving, my workload is being somewhat helped by the efficiency I gain from using the AI tools. In fact, just to give like a small example, that video that I showed during this presentation, I recorded the first version. Rita gave me a little bit of feedback. I recorded a second version and asked Claude to do the video combining for me. So I didn't have to use any video editing tools or anything. That's a really small example of something that might have taken me an hour in the past and took me 5 minutes. So I see conversations from the AI chatbot are reviewable. Does Pit have, oh, you mean, so you're able to see your own chats? We don't have access to your chats. I think there's one small carve out if we were subpoenaed or something like that, legal would have to get involved, but other than that, no one will look at anybody's chats.
Are there plans to offer a class, not from Pit Digital at this time, but I think that would be a great thing for us to partner with somebody on.
Okay, thank you so much. This was excellent presentation. I think we've all learned something from this. So it's very exciting to see what's available to us right now. And as we've seen, there are plenty of tools and they're powerful, they're accessible, and students are using them. So that brings us to our last session, and I'm pleased to introduce Jeff Aziz, Assistant Dean and Interim Academic Integrity Officer here at Pitt. Jeff has been thinking deeply about all these questions, and I'm looking forward to the candid conversation about all of these issues. So, Jeff, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I want to thank Dwight and Dan. And as a matter of fact, apropos of their presentation, my colleague Annette V from the English department is our new, let me get her, she's the faculty liaison for AI enablement. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit when I give my presentation. There's a survey that she would love to get your feedback on. I've put it in the chat, and you know, a lot of questions coming up in the chat at the end of Dwight and Dan's presentation were about you know, development, student access to coursework on these materials, and all of those things are organically in development by multiple players in the university system, and there are good conversations going on. And if you are not aware of the PASTA group that meets the first Tuesday of each month over in the law school, and you're interested in AI issues here, you should feel free to get involved with that. So in January of 2023, I became the academic integrity dean, and this was almost exactly at the same time of the widespread availability of ChatGPT, one of the first LLM platforms that, you know, to which we had free access. And at the time, it seemed to me that like this LLM thing was interesting. It was interesting in the history of like the philosophy of computing, but it seemed to have no use except for the plagiarism of undergraduate writing. Now, here we are 3 years later, and there's no getting away from artificial intelligence. When we joined the Zoom app for this meeting, we were prompted to whether we wanted to enable the Zoom AI assistant. Why does Zoom have an AI assistant? Well, I put it to you that at one point, the CEO of Zoom said, we need some teams working on how we can integrate AI into our platform so that we can continue to seem relevant and so that we can be seen as players in the AI scene. This is a problem of AI, right? Okay. And indeed, right, in just the last few weeks, we have learned that OpenAI purchased about 40% of the world's capacity to produce computer memory. So right now, there is a huge run on for hard drives, computer memory, and we as consumers will pay more for video cards, hard drives, computer memory, laptops, desktop systems than we have in the past because we are competing against the deep pockets of Sam Altman and OpenAI. Crucial AI, the manufacturers of the memory for my home computer are no longer going to sell to the home consumer. They are going to direct all of their productivity to fulfill their contracts with OpenAI for commercial AI products. I don't know whether NVIDIA, makers of the GPUs that are used for AI processing, have pulled their money out of the White House ballroom or not. So, I mean, this is the way in which AI is very present to us right now. And here is the thing. I have never seen generative AI as a crisis in the university in terms of plagiarism. It is part of the landscape of academic integrity process. I worry much more about AI in the world writ large than in the university around these narrow academic integrity concerns, which I think we have largely learned to navigate. What do I worry about? Dave was talking in his presentation about the fact that technologies arrive that we didn't ask for. And the technology that I didn't ask for at the moment is one that's being pushed at me on YouTube all the time. It is ads for a platform called Speechify. So it is an AI text-to-speech utility. And their advertising works through this sort of trope. Someone will be sitting in a library reading a book, and the point of view of the commercial comes up to them, and a voice asks, why you're reading it that way? You're reading it wrong. They take the book away from the person and throw it away, and then they show them the Speechify app that will now read the book to them, right? Deliver the book to them in the form of speech. And indeed, they have legally licensed the voices of Snoop Dogg and other. And here is the thing. Do I find it interesting potentially to have Snoop Dogg read me my email or whatever I might use this for? Yeah, there is an appeal in that. The dark side of that, though, is that Speechify, and I think they know they're doing this, are coming for your skills, right? That when we say, you know, you can read Madame Bovary over your headphones in 15 minutes walking to your class, the place in which we are being de-skilled is a kind of fundamental necessary skill, reading. And there may be things there may be tasks like the syntactic tasks that Dave was talking about that are so discipline specific, and that when technology replaces them, they are kind of disposable. I'm having a hard time feeling that way about reading. I mentioned I was talking to my colleague Annette V about her role as Pitt's newly minted faculty liaison for AI enablement. And I don't want to put words in Annette's mouth, but let me say that in that conversation, we found ourselves in a very similar place as regards AI in the university. And I think this is important to say, right? That in her role as facilitator, in my role as a facilitator for a great many things that go on with AI in the university, I am not necessarily a promoter of AI. That is to say, if artificial intelligence is useful and benefits the educational experience of our students, then I'm all for it. But I think that we have to assimilate AI into the university on our terms, right? Mobilizing our intellectual values, because the wants and needs of the marketplace will be pushed into this environment, whether we want that or not, right? When we talk about like Outlook Companion, we're also talking about the way in which Microsoft has come into the university and made themselves indispensable to us through all these utilities we just love, like Teams, right? So it is a project for the university to understand AI in the way that only we understand these phenomena in the world, with our our imperative to understand the social world, to reflect upon it, right? And we need to be very careful about what we permit into the classroom. And we often think about this in student terms like plagiarism and all this. Okay, that's legitimate, right? One thing that's on my mind right now is AI assessment. And we've had some interesting conversations in the PASTA group and amongst colleagues about the use of AI in grading, commenting, and assessment, right? And indeed, in our recent Gen AI Dialogues survey of student attitudes and experience with AI, it emerged that there were students at some Pitt campuses who suspected faculty of using AI in grading, commenting, and assessment. But I'm not sure that that was true. I'm not sure that that was true, but they suspected this. And this is what I would say about that. We need to be thinking now about ethics and best practices in computer assessment, grading, commenting, evaluation. The caveat I want to offer is, right, the reason for using computer assessment, grading, evaluation cannot simply be saving labor for faculty at the expense of the student experience. Okay, so this is what I would say. If we're going to do these things, we need to do them responsibly, transparently, with our programs, with our schools, with our students, right? It would be a bad thing if students learned that they were being assessed by an LLM when they got their comments and they were like, wow, this certainly looks like LLM output. Right? That would be a terrible time for students to learn that they are being involved in AI assessment. The other thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to quit, and we can take questions, and we can take questions generally, because that I think is going to be useful, is one of the problems that we are going to confront in the next couple of years, especially around issues of plagiarism, is the integration of AI tools into every writing platform that we are going to be composing on. So I fully expect that, like, we know this about Google, right? Google will give you writing advice. Grammarly wants students to do all their composing on their platform, and their advertising seems to suggest that, get on Grammarly and we'll just ask you a few questions, and pretty soon you're going to have a paper that will earn a better grade than it would have had you simply worked on it yourself. So making distinctions between what is AI work and what is normal work is going to become more difficult. And this is one of the reasons why we need to think about assessment and why we do things. Why do we use these kinds of assignments? Why do we use these kinds of tests? And I think that I welcome AI for this reason, that it's making us think about why we do the things we do. And if we discover that the answer is, well, I do this because they were doing it when I came into the profession and it was a practice that circulated a lot and I'm used to grading assignments of this sort, well, those are answers, but those aren't necessarily good answers for why that form of assessment needs to be perpetuated into the future. So let's by all means, I have been thinking a lot about the kind of assignments I want to grade. Right? We don't all have the flexibility of a literature professor to do this, but let's think about why we're doing the things we do. Let's be responsible to one another and to our students. And I have felt that one of the reasons that the AI moment has been easy to navigate as an academic integrity dean is we have good organic relations in this university. And when I think about like AI initiatives, they have not been top down. They have not been mandates from on high that we somehow integrate AI into our teaching or something like this. They have been projects that have grown up around the work of people like my colleagues Annette V and Jess Fitzpatrick and Dmitry Babichenko over in Sky. And the result is, I think that we have a nice conversation about AI, that we are in a good position to integrate AI into the things that we do in ways that reinforce our educational values, in ways that improve the experience for our students. But it's not a panacea, and it's not going to do our teaching for us, right? We're going to do that driving. Also, if I may, I'm just going to end in an offside comment about Notebook LM. I believe it was a colleague of David Evans who worked on the text-to-speech podcasting features of Notebook LM, and I really enjoyed it when I first used it. And indeed, one of the things that makes Notebook LM work really, really well is a lot of thought has been given to allocution, right? To the non-communicative aspect of language. It has good hemming and hawing. So I'm gonna stop there, and I think it might be, if we've got time for questions, it might be good to take questions generally because there might be questions related to the other presenters.
Yes, we absolutely have some time left. So yeah, that was we also had that suggestion. So thank you, Jeff. And thank you very much for your very insightful and thought-provoking presentation, I should say. So please, if anybody has questions, I think there's some on the chat, some topics that may be discussed, but we have another 10, 15 minutes easily. Thank you.
Perhaps raised hands if you have questions, because just looking back into the chat, it's kind of complex.
All right, then can I actually ask you a question? So when we talk about cheating with AI use, how do we proceed? Because it's very hard to say, yes, this was AI with a certainty. So what should we do about this?
That's a great question, and the lack of certainty around the assessment that this bland piece of text looks like it came out of an LLM. So there are a number of things I would say here, right? One of them is the manner in which that bland text fails to meet the prompt in the first place, right? So that should be part of the conversation. Here is the thing. We are in the field of human interaction when we deal with an imputation of inappropriate generative AI use. And that is generally where we solve these things, right? First of all, we respect students' due process rights. We don't assume guilt. And then we have a conversation. And here is, it is going to be a project for the university to we have a responsibility to educate our students ethically. That is to say, they're coming from high school where they were very much ethically regulated by others, and now they're responsible for their own lives. And our norms about doing one's own work, about LLM use, these are new and evolving things. So we can't expect our students to be exactly where we are on intellectual responsibility issues. We do have to educate. So the two things I would say is we need a cultural effort, right? We need to develop relationships with our students in which they will feel that they should not be dishonest, where they feel ethically responsible to us. The other thing is we solve these problems on the field of human endeavor. We have conversations, and the fact of the matter is that historically, those conversations result in a meeting of the minds. It is not the case that the imputation, the suspicion of large language model AI use results in academic integrity cases that are harder to close than any others. They're pretty much the same as everything else. So the fact that we can't deterministically say, I know this to be LLM output, I mean, that's going to get harder and harder, right? I think actually thinking about designing our assessments so that they are more difficult to cheat will be a part of that. And by all means, design new assessments. I will mention something quickly. I designed a prompt for my Shakespeare's Sexualities class that asked students as pairs to create historical identities for themselves, a historical context, and then to go and have a conversation, keyboarding, as if they were those two characters. It really evolved out of something I thought students might do with AI. Why do I like it? It is almost impossible for an LLM to produce the kind of dialogues that those students produced. It just cannot assume characters in a give and take in the way that human beings can. And incidentally, the students would have to conspire on cheating in order to cheat on this assignment. So there were all kinds of features of it. But you know what the best part was? It produced great student work. And indeed, two students whose work was not otherwise exceptional wrote a piece for this that was truly exceptional. It was like an Umberto Eco or Jorge Borges piece, very good. So when we go to new assessments, we also discover new literacies in our students. So there's no simple answer to that question, but there's my answer. And I think Jay Arms had a hand up first.
Hi, thanks everyone for taking the time to share some of this information with us. I'm going to kind of repeat a question I had in the chat earlier, just to see maybe Jeff can weigh in a little bit about the possibility of a class for students to learn how to effectively and ethically use these tools in a proper way. Right now, I feel like a lot of the messaging I'm hearing from the Dietrich School and from the Center for Teaching is really oriented towards us as faculty. But at a certain point, I feel like we are not the best ones to teach this in our classes. We have our own disciplines that we're trying to engage with. So trying to show students how to write an effective prompt, where they can use the tool in a proper way and where it's not acceptable. It's really difficult for us to individually start to articulate that. So I think a really centralized place to show students, here's where the university stands on what you can do would be great. So I'm thinking something along the lines of the freshman comp seminar, or a few years ago, I believe there was a course on anti-Semitism that the students were required to take. Like, there are systems in place for that. So I wonder if there's a discussion about that, when that's going to roll out, because for me, the sooner the better. But thank you for any clarification you can add.
So Jay, my knowledge of this is somewhat ad hoc. But my colleagues in DNID are teaching on AI cultures. But what you're talking about is kind of a fundamental. Now, talking about gen eds, as you know, is complicated right now anyway. That is adding or modifying the requirements. But I totally see the need and value of this. It is something we will have to think about. Annette, are you in play here? You were actually addressed in Peter Drain's post on the chat. So if you want to come in here, I'll pop out for a second.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. And thanks for the question, Jay. I will say that a lot of these things are in progress. Kind of what my colleagues have said. Pitt is awesome at all these innovative things, right? But coordinating where all these things are happening is kind of, it's a work in progress. I'll point to the fact that HAIL, the Hub for AI or Data Science and AI Leadership, has just spun up in January, and that's led by Mike Colarisi, who has been leading the Responsible Data Science Initiative. And And I think that a lot of things in terms of teaching and learning are going to come out of that. Some, a little more centralized leadership and coordination across different aspects of the university. AI is difficult in some ways because it touches on teaching and learning and IT and academic integrity and all of the different disciplines in all these different ways. And so I think it's a challenge. But in terms of student training, that's a hard nut to crack. And actually, if anybody has, ideas, go ahead and put them in the survey. Some of the challenges are, and this we discovered in surveys and conversations with students, asynchronous stuff is kind of difficult because students, can kind of automate their way through that. Are they really learning? How do we roll it out to, our tens of thousands of students? The library is doing excellent work. There are a lot of, in the email that came out about Claude for students, there's really good videos that are put out by Anthropic on AI fluency. They're excellent. I recommend them. So there's a lot of different places for students to get it. I think the next thing that we're working on, and I know that a lot of faculty are working on that, is like how to embed these kinds of things in our curriculum. So AI literacy and training and student engagement is probably going to come most meaningfully in our classes. And so that's, I think, difficult to scale, right? And there's questions of compensation that Lisa brought up in the chat. There's a lot of challenges to that, but I think that that's ultimately kind of where we're really going to meaningfully reach students about AI engagement.
Annette, thank you so much for speaking. This was absolutely unexpected, but absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for giving us all this information and your perspective. There's another hand, I think, and I think we have a couple more minutes.
Leonardo?
Oh, yes, that's me. That's me. Hi, how are you? I'm a PhD student at Nikon, but I will teach Latin American development during the summer. And we're planning to do some essays. So I want to have like any recommendation. I was thinking to make them write by hand. So in case they do the support with AI, that I think is totally normal, they will be forced to think about it and to think the chain of thought and to think about, maybe, I don't know about handwriting, but I want to make them learn. And that sometimes is difficult when you use an AI and you have a deadline and you don't have enough time to reread what the AI fixed and everything. So it's like, how can I help them to use AI to write essays and learn and be conscious about that? Like do some edits, but keep track of them, of those. Yeah.
This is a kind of general response to Leonardo. I've become very interested in like this phase of work. That is to say, note-taking, right? Practices of like using Post-it notes to mark books that you're reading. And indeed, one of the ways I think that you can facilitate what you're talking about generally is think about what are the early phases of work, right, that lead us into projects, larger projects? And arguably writing a 5-page essay is a larger project, right? What is the groundwork that is laid? What are the things you do before you sit down to write? Indeed, I've been talking to some colleagues about the possibility of a course on note-taking, and note-taking is very interesting in and of itself. And then you can think about the way in which one uses something like if one composes in Google Docs, right? Think about workflows. Think about modeling for your students the workflows you think that they should be doing. And by the way, tell them why you want to do this. Because of Speechify, I have gone into my classes this semester and I have said to my students, there is an expected work method in this class that you will read the text, right? You will read the text in the conventional way, that you will use note-taking practices that are appropriate, and that you will compose your work based on your reading of the text, right? I don't say this to condescend to my students or to suggest that they're inclined to be lazy or plagiarize, but I say it because there is a value to these practices. And when I talk about them in terms of how I get work done and their value for me, it's demystified a bit and approaching the compositional practice itself, right? I have to sit down and write a paper. I am not sitting down in a vacuum. I have my notes. I have my annotated reading materials that I'm going to deploy. As much as possible, operationalize for your students why you do the things you do, because there are many good practices that if we use them, but we don't tell the student why we're using them, they seem like arcane practices that we deploy for reasons known only to us. When we're telling students why we've made the design decisions we've made, why this kind of assignment rather than another one, then they are much more likely to engage, in a ethically responsible way in doing that assignment. Okay, it's a general answer, but be honest with your students. Be honest about your concerns, right? And I think this takes us to a good place.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. We have 5 more minutes, so if there's one more hand raised, maybe just a short answer, and we can just complete it on time. Thank you.
Scott, I believe you've gone on mic.
Yeah, thank you. 2 questions. One is related to a conversation I had with Annette about this last year, and the other is about academic integrity. And I'm worried about what is the writing requirement now at the university, and what does writing mean? And Annette gave me a very interesting response last year to kind of rethink what are my goals for writing. I mean, I always think of it as a wonderful pedagogical tool where the students have to bring together their ideas and organize them and provide their own commentary and things, which is, a wonderful, important thing. And what you said, Jeff, about, the dialogue is another way that you get some of this out, but it's very different than writing. And so just thinking through what is the requirement at Pitt for a writing course that I'm supposed to, teach, what does that mean? And the related part of this, or semi-related, is what you said about academic integrity. And while I agree that we can talk to the students and work these things through, there's just now so much of it, it's impossible, because it's very stressful, both for the student and the faculty member. And it's not like an individual isolated incident anymore. I mean, so many students are using it. And personally, it's just too much effort to try to challenge them all. And so that, I think, is really a troubling part of that academic integrity.
It is. I don't mean to paper over so recently a colleague came to me and said 2/3 of the discussion board posts from a class of first-year students appeared to be LLM stuff, right? And that marks a kind of shift in culture, but it was also an opportunity for my colleague to have a conversation with those students. And it is a reality, Scott, that our norms are not something that are the default habitus of a high school student, right? They are the norms of a Research One university, and we can't expect them to arrive with those norms. And it will be a project for us to bring them into the ability to engage in a mutually responsible, ethical institution. But we're going to have to try and see if it can be done. And I resist the discourse of disaster. We have adapted up until this point, and I think we can maintain our flexibility and have good communications. And Scott, if we didn't have big problems, they wouldn't need smart people like us to solve them. And I think one of the good things about the university is that collaboratively, we get to good places, we solve problems, we reflect on practices. And I think this is a great time to reflect on practices. And we try to develop practices that are suited to the moment. I'm in the classroom too, so I'm not practically divorced from this stuff. And, here is another thing. I know about the worst of the worst when it comes to what's going on in academic integrity situations. And the worst of the worst does not suggest that the educational project is compromised at this moment, in my opinion. We can disagree, but I think that I think that generative AI isn't the only problem. And I think that culturally we have a responsibility to educate our students ethically too. And that, I mean, this is one of the reasons that the university is under attack at the moment, right? Is that it is recognized that we represent certain kinds of moral, ethical norms that are, under certain kinds of pressure right now. So I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you so much. And the timing is perfect. Thank you to all of our speakers, and I hope all the participants really enjoyed this as much as I did. There was a lot of very interesting thoughts and information, and we would like to continue with these seminars. So please fill out the survey that we've just sent. And hopefully we can meet again and talk about these things again, because we all understand how important. So thank you very much, and we'll share the videos and the materials we will get from our presenters. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.